Hey everyone, and welcome to the first part of the Kingdom Hearts review series. What is there to say about Kingdom Hearts? It's one of my all-time favorite franchises, and a lot of that has to stem from the fact that I've been with the franchise since day one, almost 20 years ago. I've bought every game, sometimes more than once, the pop figures, the books, and I even went to that Kingdom Hearts Orchestra concert thing back in 2019. I also did a Let's Play of the majority of the franchise on my Let's Play channel, shameless plug. I remember hearing about the first game on Disney Channel in a segment called Disney Underground Labs. I'm not even sure if this segment continued on after the game launched because I never saw this particular segment again. I mean, Disney did do coverage on certain games in the future, but they never really did anything like this, and I'm pretty sure they never did any sort of cross-connection for any future Kingdom Hearts games after this, to be fairly honest. I think I saw ads in GamePro magazine not too long after that, and at that point my interest was at an all-time high. I mean, I was a 10-year-old kid who loved the Final Fantasy games at the time, and I'd been a fan of Disney's animated films since I was like a baby. I naturally thought the idea was insane, but kind of intriguing. I mean, how is Donald Duck gonna act standing next to someone like Cloud Strife? Would Squall fight alongside Mickey Mouse? I mean, what are the rules here, you know? Regardless, Kingdom Hearts seems like a huge gamble, trying to pair two things that at first glance wouldn't necessarily seem to mix well. The idea from the series actually stemmed out of a conversation between two Square Enix, then Squaresoft producers, talking about Super Mario 64. These producers were Shinji Hashimoto, known for his work on Final Fantasy VIII and IX, and the second was the father of the Final Fantasy franchise himself, Hironobu Sakaguchi. And the two were talking about developing a game in a 3D world similar to what had been done in Super Mario 64. But they felt that any concept they would have come up with would fail because they felt that only the characters as popular as the one from Disney's library could possibly be a rival to Mario. I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, there was a laundry list of mascot platformers that came out after Mario 64, and let's just say that a good chunk of them didn't go anywhere. Overhearing this conversation was another Square employee, a character designer named Tetsuya Nomura. Nomura had been with Square since the early 90s, and while he started as a monster designer, he soon was given the chance to design the characters for Final Fantasy VII, VIII, and X. Nomura volunteered to lead the team, and Hashimoto and Sakaguchi agreed to produce. Now, at this point in the story, you might be thinking, how the heck did a Japanese game studio, mostly known at the time for crafting pretty adult role-playing games, possibly be allowed to touch anything inside the Disney Vault? Well, it's thanks in part to some dumb luck, actually. You see, way back in 2000, Square and Disney, for whatever bizarre, crazy reason, worked inside of the same building in Japan. I don't really understand how that's possible. It's kind of like if there was McDonald's located inside the Burger King. It just seems like two things that wouldn't be together, but, whatever. Hashimoto got into an elevator with a Disney executive at the time, and he was able to pitch him the idea. Yes, the man literally got to do an elevator pitch to Disney. Now, Disney being, Disney, they had some rules. Nomura had to defy a ton of these proposals from Disney because they wanted Square to use an established Disney character to anchor the game, while Nomura wanted to create an original character. Development started with Disney Interactive and Square trying to make a game with a simple story that would appeal to the target age of Disney's films at the time. However, it was Sakaguchi who took Nomura to the side and told him to shoot for the same tone and substance of the Final Fantasy series. And oh boy, did Nomura take that little nugget of advice to heart, because whew! Square also had the support of then Disney president Bob Iger, and in a strange twist, the team was given very few restrictions on what properties that they could use. The days when Disney didn't own half of the cinematic film properties out there. Years later, Nomura revealed where the title of the game had come from. Originally simply titled Kingdom, due in part to the various Disney parks having that word used in each of the names of specific areas of the park. However, Square couldn't secure the IP as Kingdom because, it's kind of a word. It'd be like trying to start an IP called Bacon, or like what Candy Crush tried to do, where they thought they could trademark the word Saga because they're idiots. In the end, when Hearts became a bigger part of the game's overall story, the team combined the words to form the final title. So now let's dive right into the game itself, and this time I'm giving you guys a heads up. I am spoiling this game from start to finish. Hell, I'm going to be spoiling all of the Kingdom Hearts games, and that's just how I want to review them, to be honest. It's because I need to talk about them. They're role-playing games, and it's heavily dependent on the story. Skipping all that with a plot summary and just telling you what I think about it isn't really going to do it justice. And I know I'm giving you the warning mostly because a lot of people were not too happy with the fact that I spoiled Metal Gear Solid and Grand Theft Auto 3. I mean, to be fairly honest, those are both 20-plus-year-old games that I'm assuming most people have played or heard of or know the plot lines to, or in Grand Theft Auto 3's case, it's Grand Theft Auto. It's not like I spoiled, the most shocking game plotline ever in existence, but I see where people are coming from. I understand not maybe everyone has played these games, to be fair, and a lot of people might be younger and maybe haven't had the chance to explore them, so just to be safe, I'm throwing a timestamp up on the video for the first time ever, and you can skip to this number, and oh boy, that's... Well, if it's any indication based on how many pages I've written for this script so far, that time is probably going to be way into the video. So it's not a mistake, that's probably right, so just skip to that if you don't want to know spoilers, although you probably should play the game, come back, and then watch the review at that point, because you kind of need to know the plot for these things. I feel like if you're going to review a role-playing game, you kind of have to address the story in a sort of deeper meaning than I've done in some of the other videos. Oh, and just a heads up, I'm using the PS4 version of the Final Mix version of the game, not the original base PS2 version, but don't worry, I'll point out the differences as we make our way through. Final Mix is essentially a director's cut of sorts. It was released after the original game launched and contained all of the content found in the North American version, which was actually absent from the initial Japanese version. They also added some new features too, like some enemies have different color palettes and things like that, but don't worry, we'll discuss everything as we kind of make it through. And this version was actually exclusive to Japan until the HD remix came out in 2013. I still remember, like, I was begging my parents to let me import a Japanese PS2 because I desperately wanted to play the Final Mix versions of Kingdom Hearts, but then I kind of realized you also needed to buy like a different outlet plug, because obviously the plug is not the same as it is here in North America, so obviously that wasn't going to work. But I remember going on websites crazily trying to like convince my parents that, oh yeah, just buy me this thing, just buy me a Japanese PS2, just buy me a Japanese PS2, I want to play Final Mix. But hey, patience sort of won out in the end, and you know, almost 10 years after the first game came out, we got it, so you know, end of story, it's happy ending. So first off, let's talk about the main menu, the song in the background. Titled Dearly Beloved, it would go on to be the official main theme of the franchise, appearing on the title menu of each game. It's relaxing and calming, and even the first time I heard it, it sounded so beautiful that I definitely stayed on the menu far longer than I should have. It's why to this day, each time a new Kingdom Hearts game comes out, I hang out on the menu until the song loops, thinking about how long it's been since the last game in the series and how long it's been since the series started. And I know, I'm skipping to the music, and I usually do that last in these reviews, but it's so damn good, and okay, don't worry, we'll talk more about the music later under the presentation in more detail. So you hit new game, and the title flies at you like a cheap gimmick you see in a 3D film, and some cryptic sentences pop up on screen, and then the bass builds, and then bam, J-pop song. We see shots of our three main characters, and while it's not really clear what's happening in these shots, that song just gets you pumped up. Simple and Clean by Urata Hikaru is the main theme song, and it's the first of 4 kick-ass J-pop songs to be created for this franchise. Damn, the music in this game is just so awesome. I know, we'll talk about it later, but we got plenty more to talk to before we get there. So let's actually just start with the plot then. Well, after the song fades out, we start playing as Sora on the Station of Awakening. The music is this choir voices making you feel like you're in some sacred place and you're not sure what to make of things. And I'm talking about the music again, I didn't mean to do that, but there's a voice telling you that you need to take your time and think about your choices. Like, this feels all Final Fantasy, you know, with the disembodied voice and the strangely dressed Sora, but yet here we are standing on a stained glass window of, you know, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This area basically acts as a tutorial section showing the player how to fight, lock onto enemies, and use the menu commands. It also shows you how to push boxes, a skill that will be used at no point in this game and wisely will be removed from all sequels. The big important thing to notice here is that the choices the game gives you. Unlike more modern games and even more recent games within this franchise, the game never really clues you into what your choices here affect. You first get to pick between 3 weapons, and this one's pretty self-explanatory. The first weapon you pick up is what you'll be skilled in, and the second is what you want to give up and essentially be weaker in. The sword means you have better strength, the shield gets you better defense, and the rod makes you better at magic. The next part of the section that affects the game is the questions you get asked. There are 3 responses that you can pick from, and choosing them in a specific way will affect how fast Sora will level up through the game. Again, this isn't really abundantly clear unless you have a guide. I mean, they do give a cryptic kind of summary as to what you chose, which kinda clues you into it, but it's not 100%. Even the first time I played this, I had no idea exactly what that meant. I just thought it was more Final Fantasy mumbo-jumbo, cryptic-y, ooh kind of dialogue. I didn't think it meant anything. Some choices here have Sora leveling up faster till he hits level 50, or slower until he hits level 50, and finally there's a balanced leveling up method. And I really like this kind of stuff because it essentially tweaks the difficulty in a unique way without just having a difficulty option. And spoiling these here in the future, but stuff like this never really shows up in the series again. And you do get the occasional pick a choice here, pick a thing there, and try to move forward, but there was nothing ever like this, where it didn't seem as clear-cut as what you were doing, and it doesn't really affect the game as much as it does kind of here, so kind of a disappointment. I guess they got rid of it because if you didn't know what these things are doing, particularly the questions, you might inadvertently make the game harder on yourself, although the game isn't really that difficult on normal, and oh damn, I forgot about the difficulty settings. Yeah, so in the base PS2 version there was just 2, there was normal and expert, and in the Final Mix version there was beginner, standard, and proud. Expert and proud are basically your hard modes, although I think proud mode was probably a tad harder than expert was in the North American version. You definitely want to play all these games on the highest difficulty you got, so your victories don't come off as easy. Or you could do what my stupid ass did when I first played the game and never take off the first Keyblade you're given. Yeah, I did this totally by accident. I must have turned the game off after getting the first new Keyblade, and I just totally forgot to go and equip it, and then I just never realized what they kept giving me at the end of certain levels and that I could go equip a new Keyblade. So I made it to almost around the final areas of the game using the standard basic Keyblade, which ironically is a trophy that you can do in the PS3, PS4 versions now, so that's ironic. Okay, so after all this, the game finally begins, and we meet the three main characters from the intro, Sora and his two friends Riku and Kairi. The trio live out on the Destiny Islands with their parents. Although we never see parents in the series, we just hear Sora's mom in this game call him down for dinner, and that's about it. So I guess she spent, well, I guess technically in universe it was only about maybe 3 years technically the series transpires over, but in real life, man, that poor lady's been waiting almost 2 decades for her son to come down to eat. They also live with Final Fantasy characters Wakka, Selphie, and Tidus, who were redesigned here as children. And this is where the game subtly tells you that when it comes to the Final Fantasy characters popping up in this game, they don't really follow the canon of what happened in their respected games. They're cameos, and they're unattached from the baggage of the plot from where they came from. I guess that's because maybe not everyone played through all the Final Fantasy games. Also, it would be kind of confusing to tie in all of the Final Fantasy characters together, given all the backstories and plot devices that happen within their own games, so I kind of see why they did it this way. Also, again, these characters shouldn't be the main focus. The new characters like Sora, Riku, and Kairi should take center stage. The Final Fantasy characters here are just to make us all feel comfortable, like, oh, there's someone I know. It's like when you're at a party and you see somebody that you recognize. Hey, there's Selphie and there's Tidus. I remember them from that other game I played. I feel more comfortable now. And for a good example of how this doesn't make any sense plot-wise from where they came from, Selphie here is a child, but later we're going to run into Squall, and he's an adult. And then in a later game, we end up meeting Cypher, and he's a teenager, so it's completely whatever the heck they want to do in regards to the Final Fantasy characters. Or how we also meet Aerith, who, should be dead. Or is she the Aerith from the remake of Final Fantasy VII, since that game's about to mess with the time limit of events, and oh, look at Nomura, he's planting the seeds all the way back in Kingdom Hearts, setting up his remake. Smart guy. Regardless, the three are bored with living on the island because, well, it's an island, and they plan to build a raft and set sail to find another world. And I love all three of these characters. Sora's your typical friendly, nice guy. Riku's more of like the strong silent type you'd see in the Final Fantasy games, and Kairi's just sweet and adorable. They spend the first few days on the island building the raft by collecting materials to build it and stock it, though I laugh each time I play through this section when I think about what they're taking with them. I legit picked up 3 mushrooms, a seagull egg, 3 fish, and a bottle of water. I mean, how long were they planning to be out on that raft? Each day you learn a little bit more about the three, how they all clearly want to explore and see other worlds because they're bored with their plain existence on this island, how Sora and Riku have a friendly rivalry, and clearly they both have feelings towards Kairi. On the second day, Sora meets a mysterious man in the secret place cave talking about how he's looking for the door to this world, which most likely is the weird looking door thing that's inside the cave. Sora deduces that this man in the potato sack clearly came from another world, but before he can do anything, he vanishes. As for who this man is, it will be revealed in due time, and as to how this man got here, well, that's a longer story for another game in the franchise to explain, but trust me, we're gonna say that a lot. While this is happening, we jump to Disney Castle, where court magician Donald Duck learns that King Mickey is missing. He goes to alert Goofy, who's captain of the guards, and tries to get him to hide this news from Queen Minnie and Daisy, who ironically has no title despite wearing a fancy dress. Now I have to address why Mickey is MIA here. So, jumping ahead, and big spoilers here, you don't find Mickey until the end of the game, which seems like a normal thing. However, this was actually one of the rules Disney had when drafting the script. You see, Square couldn't use Mickey for a prolonged period of time, and they couldn't even touch his outfit. Yeah, no redesign here. You'll notice that Donald and Goofy are clearly wearing new outfits, but Mickey appears at the end for like 0.5 seconds, and he's wearing his traditional red shorts. Nope, he was not yet blessed with the multiple zippers and pockets that the cast of original characters would be bestowed upon in future games. So I find it very funny how Nomura ended up retconning this as to why Mickey is in just this outfit in a game that came out like 15 years later, but like I said before, another game, another story. Anyway, Mickey's left a letter saying that the stars are blinking out, which means the worlds are under attack, and he needs to find out why. So he wants Donald and Goofy to find someone with a key who's able to help them. So Donald and Goofy, along with Jiminy Cricket, head off in the Gummy ship to Traverse Town to find him. Meanwhile, back on the Destiny Islands, a storm hits and causes Sora, Riku, and Kairi to go check on the raft. He arrives to find the island infested with the shadow monsters from earlier, and then Sora finds Riku talking about how a door is open for them to leave the island. He tries to get Sora to join him, but thanks to the power of weird darkness thingies, he can't. Riku then vanishes while Sora is now left with the Keyblade. Sora then looks for Kairi only to find her in the secret place, but she vanishes in front of him after the door opens, and then Sora battles that weird shadow demon thing of himself from the tutorial. At this point, Donald and Goofy have arrived in Traverse Town, a world where people wind up who have lost their homeworlds. Sora naturally lands here as well, and after running into Sid from Final Fantasy VII in the item shop, Sora begins his search for Riku and Kairi, while Donald and Goofy are also on their search for the key. After running into more monsters, Sora comes across Squall, now calling himself Leon because, I don't know, Squall was never my favorite Final Fantasy character. I always thought he was an ass. I think I remember reading something like, I think he failed to protect someone from the Heartless, so he decided to change his name. That sounds like a really douchey thing that Squall would do, so I mean, I'll buy it. Sora then has to fight him, and this is one of several fights in the game in which you actually get an alternate cutscene should you win. It doesn't affect how the story plays out, but these little additions are nice enough, and I hate that they were removed in later games. Regardless of whether you win or lose, Sora will be taken to Leon and Yuffie for a plot exposition scene, while Donald and Goofy encounter Aerith for the same. The Final Fantasy characters explain that the creatures we've been fighting this whole time are called the Heartless, and the Heartless are created when there is darkness in a person's heart. The Heartless can only be weakened, or killed I guess, by the Keyblade, although later games kinda retcon that into having other weapons hurt them, although here's what I think's really happening. Considering that Donald and Goofy are fighting the Heartless with us in this game, and they kill them too, I'm guessing that the Keyblade just unlocks the heart the Heartless stole, whereas when Donald and Goofy kill them, they just disappear. I think. Again, don't think too much on it, because the more you think about it, it might not make a whole lot of sense. Leon, Aerith, Yuffie, and Cid all came from the same world before arriving in Traverse Town, and that their home was lost to the Heartless, and that their world's leader, a man called Ansem, had been studying them for quite some time. After the plot dump, the Heartless attack and the party split up, though not before one of the funniest cutscenes in the series.
Yuffie!
Sora, let's go!
Love that scene. Eventually, Sora, Donald, and Goofy encounter a big Heartless boss and destroy it before explaining what they all want to do next. Donald and Goofy clearly want Sora to come with them to find Mickey, while Sora just really wants to find Riku and Kairi. Donald, being the stubborn duck he is, lies, and says of course just to get Sora to come along. Sora rethinks this, and after one bizarre-looking smile later, the party is set to go on their way. Meanwhile, in a dark and foreboding room, several Disney villains meet, though I love how they try really hard to hide them in the dark when it's pretty obvious who everyone is. You got Captain Hook, Hades, Ursula, Oogie Boogie, Jafar, and the leader of the pack, the evil witch herself, Maleficent. And no, I'm not talking about that watered-down Angelina Jolie version, I'm talking about the OG Maleficent with the creepy-ass eyes and the voice and straight-up evil. Seriously, was anybody else really freaked out by Sleeping Beauty as a kid because of this witch? Because I was petrified. I really love this scene because it's like the game's plot just got rolling and the board is literally setting up here. It's like showing you, like, here's all the bosses you're going to be taking down, really building up the excitement for the adventure to come. Now at this point the plot kind of stops a bit with only bits and pieces being revealed as you travel to each Disney World. The worlds themselves have plots similar to the films they're based on, but it's not always one-to-one. Also, the game explains the rules of how Kingdom Hearts crossover potential works at this point. All of the worlds are usually separated from each other, kind of like how the Marvel movies were before the MCU was a thing. The walls between the worlds are gone now thanks to the Heartless, which allows for us to travel between them. However, when traveling to different worlds, you can't tell people where you're from, and you can't bring someone from one world to another. So don't expect us to bring Hercules to Aladdin, or Aladdin to the Little Mermaid's world. And I like how these rules are structured. It keeps things simple. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail what happens in each of the Disney worlds unless it heavily impacts the plot, so I'm just going to sum it up, because if I literally explain everything that happens in every single world, this review is going to be like 8 hours. The first world you're supposed to go to is Wonderland, and this is a pretty basic level, nothing of really note here, except that in the end, Sora's Keyblade locks a keyhole, but he isn't really sure why it happened. You run into Alice, who goes missing, and it's later revealed that she's been kidnapped and taken to Maleficent because her evil plan has something to do with princesses. Although I should note that when I mention the princesses in this review, I'm talking about the princesses of Heart that are established in Kingdom Hearts' lore, not the Disney princesses that are the official Disney princesses, because it's a different list of people here than it is in reality. Also, this is another one of those alternate cutscenes, believe it or not. You see, when you leave Traverse Town, you're given 3 worlds to visit, and you're supposed to go to Wonderland first, like I said. But if you choose to go the other way and beat the other 2 levels first, the cutscene that shows Alice being kidnapped is triggered automatically, even if you haven't entered Wonderland. So instead, it ends up showing them kidnapping Snow White instead, and I think that was actually pretty cool. Again, I like these kind of things. The next level is Deep Jungle, based off of Tarzan, and the only thing that happens here that's connected to the plot is showing how the Heartless are attracted to worlds, and the game's gating system. When you arrive in Deep Jungle, there are no Heartless until Clayton here gets a hard-on for trying to track the gorillas. And Clayton's actually not a pawn in Maleficent's game, so the Heartless weren't sent here. It was the darkness in his heart that drew them in. And the game's gating system is also subtly hinted at this point when Donald and Goofy find this gummy block. See, some of these blocks actually open up new routes for you to take in space, and some of them need pairs, and this is essentially why the world map isn't completely open to you and why you only have access to a few worlds at a time. You basically find one block in one world, and then you find its pair 3 worlds later. That opens up the path to the next world. So, yeah, you know, the gating system. But to be honest, it never feels very linear. There's always multiple paths to take or multiple worlds to go to, and it's your choice whether you want to skip over the harder level, go to the easier one, or do the easy one first and then do the hard one. Also, I should probably address the gorilla in the room by revealing that this is the only Kingdom Hearts game to feature Deep Jungle, and that was due in part to Disney losing the rights to the character of Tarzan. You see, the Disney didn't really create Tarzan, they just borrowed the rights from, I think, the guy who wrote the books for Tarzan, and those rights fluctuate between different studios and production companies all the time, so unfortunately the rights here expired a year after Kingdom Hearts launched, and therefore it was unable to be used in any future installments. Not that there was much of a reason to return here, although I guess the sequel to the game could have used characters from the TV series, but no big loss. The third world is Olympus Coliseum based on Hercules, though it's really just a world to house the game's battle arena, but surprisingly there still is a plot here as Hades is present and he's up to his usual tricks of trying to kill Hercules. The world isn't technically completed when you leave it the first time, as you'll need to return multiple times to compete in the tournaments. Noteworthy moment is that Cloud's here working for Hades. Ironically, Cloud is doing that because he's looking for someone, which will immediately make you think of the one character Cloud is associated with who is dead, and he would need help from the Lord of the Dead to help see. You know, Aerith, who's clearly alive here. But actually, Cloud is looking for another Final Fantasy VII character, but more on that later. After hitting these three worlds and finding no sign of Mickey, Riku, or Kairi, the gang hightails it back to Traverse Town to learn about the keyholes that they've been sealing. It turns out that sealing these things are, kind of important, because if it's not locked, the Heartless can reach the heart of the world itself and destroy it completely. Sora then comes, of course, Riku, who randomly shows up. Riku hasn't found Kairi either, and we learn that he's clearly not the biggest fans of Donald and Goofy. Sora wants Riku to come with them, but Donald refuses because he knows that the game's party member system was only built for the three of them, and we're not about to break those rules. But before they can argue further, Riku disappears. See, it turns out Riku landed in Maleficent's world, and the witch took him in. This is actually a brand new cutscene that was added into Final Mix to better explain how Riku ran into Maleficent, although it was always pretty easy for me to understand. The witch is trying to screw with Riku's head here by making him think Sora no longer cares about him and Kairi and that he's simply replaced them with Donald and Goofy. Although what I really like about this is that Riku totally calls Maleficent on her BS.
Why are you doing all this for me? What's the catch?
Catch? What's the catch? Silly boy. You're like a son to me. I only want you to be happy.
I seriously doubt that.
He knows that she's trying to screw around with him, but he just doesn't care because he wants to find Kairi. I like that because the stereotypical cliche thing would have been the evil villain taking our best friend and making him think that we don't care about him and having a big moment at the end where he's like, I thought you didn't care about me. But nope, Riku's pretty on the level and he knows damn well that Maleficent is most likely just screwing around with him. But again, he just wants to find Kairi, so he really doesn't care what he has to do to make that happen. The next world is Agrabah, based on Aladdin, and nothing special here. We just deal with Jafar, Jasmine's kidnapped, and we seal the keyhole. Though it turns out Riku is the one who kidnapped Jasmine in exchange for Kairi's actual location. We then get swallowed by Monstro from Pinocchio, and I'm left wondering exactly how a whale is able to fly and survive in the vacuum of space. Is Monstro related to those star whales from that episode of Doctor Who? Ooh, can we have a crossover with Doctor Who? Can Disney buy Doctor Who? That would be awesome if we could have a gummy ship TARDIS. That would be amazing. Regardless, the plot moves forward a lot more in this world. Riku pops up again, only this time he makes it pretty clear that he's out playing for Team Maleficent. He kidnaps Pinocchio, believing that because he's a puppet with a heart, he might be able to help him with an issue he has with someone else. Gee, I wonder who. Sora tries to bring his friend back to his side, but Riku escapes when the boss of the area arrives and the gang rescues Pinocchio. Next up is Halloween Town, based on The Nightmare Before Christmas, and this is the first world where we get a costume change. See, there are some worlds in the series where Sora and pals will look different to better fit in. The design here is just alternate costumes and Halloween costumes at that, and I think it's pretty creative. Nothing too exciting here either, if just we take down Oogie Boogie. Next is Atlantica, based on The Little Mermaid. This world has a new design for Sora in that now he's a merman and you have to swim. It's a little funky moving around here, and it can be a little cumbersome to get used to the swimming controls. It's not god-awful, but it takes a little getting used to. Though this world's a lot like Halloween Town in that it does nothing to really move the main plot forward. We just take care of the bad guy and move on. Though King Triton does drop this little nugget.
Oh, one must not meddle in the affairs of other worlds.
Of course I know that, but...
You have violated this principle. The key bearer shatters peace and brings ruin.
And while no future games after Kingdom Hearts 2 take place in Atlantica, this was the first instance of the series confirming that there were other Keyblade wielders before Sora. Also, can I just say that the Ursula second boss fight here can kiss my ass? As a kid, I died here so many damn times that I actually went out of my way to complete most of the game before I came back and beat her. After this, we get ambushed by Captain Hook's ship in space, and we arrive in Neverland. Though this level is really just the pirate ship, we don't actually go to the island, so I'm kind of calling BS on that. Riku's here, and he's now in control of the Heartless, leading to this gem of a line from Sora.
Riku, why are you siding with the Heartless?
The Heartless obey me now, Sora. Now I have nothing to fear.
You're stupid! Sooner or later they'll swallow your heart!
We also learned that Riku found Kairi, but he just found her body. Apparently her heart is missing, and Riku's been trying to locate it. We team up with Peter Pan to escape the ship, but we end up just missing Riku, who leaves with Kairi to head to Maleficent's castle in Hollow Bastion. So at long last, we reach Maleficent's castle, and the plot gets a major boost after sitting on the sidelines for so long. Our assault on the castle is stopped prematurely as Beast, from Beauty and the Beast, is being held up by Riku. You see, the Beast here is all in Hulk smash mode because he's kinda pissed off that Maleficent stole Belle from him. Sora and the gang try to get Riku to knock it off, only for Riku to inform us of some startling plot twist.
All ends here. There can't be two Keyblade Masters.
What are you talking about?
Let the Keyblade choose. Its true master. Maleficent was right. You don't have what it takes to save Kairi. It's up to me.
And if that wasn't bad enough,
Goofy, let's go. We have to remember our mission.
Oh, well, I know the king told us to follow the key and all, but...
Sora, sorry.
so now we've got no friends and no Keyblade. But Sora is still intent on finding Kairi, so he teams up with the Beast to enter the castle. As much as this scene hurts, it happens at like just the right time. We've legit been traveling all over space, sealing keyholes, taking down Disney villains, beating up Heartless, and now at long last we've reached the final level, which should be like this gung-ho, let's run in and kill everybody and win the day kind of a thing. But no, the game just literally kicked us in the nuts by taking away our Keyblade and stripping us of our party members and telling you, good luck. Sora and the Beast make their way to the entrance where Donald and Goofy and Riku are waiting for us. The Beast gets distracted by the Heartless, leaving Sora to deal with Riku, without a weapon to fight with, leading to one of Sora's most iconic speeches in the franchise.
I know now I don't need the Keyblade. I've got a better weapon. My heart!
Your heart? What good will that weak little thing do for you?
Although my heart may be weak, it's not alone. It's grown with each new experience, and it's found a home with all the friends I've made. I've become part of their heart just as they've become a part of mine. And if they think of me now and then, if they don't forget me, then our hearts will be one. I don't need a weapon. My friends are my power.
And with Donald and Goofy back at our sides and Keyblade in hand, we school Riku in his hula skirt and calls him to bail. He heads deeper into the castle where he encounters the Potato Sack Man from the opening on Destiny Islands. Potato Sack over here influences Riku to open his heart completely to the darkness, which naturally can't end well, but we cut away before we can see what exactly happens. Sora, Donald, and Goofy travel further into the castle, arriving at the entrance to Maleficent's chambers. Maleficent, meanwhile, is using the captured princesses along with Kairi to try to open the keyhole, but it's not working for some reason. Maleficent thinks it's most likely because Kairi's heart's missing. Riku returns to her side, now talking with his voice and Potato Sack Man's together overlaid, and oh, look at that, he has a fancy new Keyblade. Maleficent leaves to deal with us, and we send her packing. However, before we can totally finish her off, Riku appears new Keyblade in hand and explains that unlike Sora's, which locks keyholes, his unlocks people's hearts, and proceeds to demonstrate by stabbing Maleficent in the chest and turning her into a dragon. Although I guess we should have seen that coming. The party deals with this, and then after that learns that Maleficent was nothing more than a puppet of the Heartless the entire time, and in no way should have been brought back for the sequels, but... again, another game, another time, we'll get there when we get there. We arrive at the keyhole and try to wake Kairi up, only for Riku to arrive and start dropping some more exposition.
The keyhole cannot be completed, so long as the last Princess of Heart still sleeps.
The princess? Kairi's a princess? Whoever you are, let Riku go! Give him back his heart!
But first, you must give the princess back her heart.
What's...
Don't you see yet? The princess's heart is responding. It has been there all along. Kairi's heart rests within you. I know all that there is to know.
Tell me, who are you?
It is I, Ansem, the Seeker of Darkness.
After separating Donald and Goofy from Sora, Riku / Ansem here tries to kill us when Sora snaps into action and kicks his ass. The party then tries to seal the keyhole, but we learn it's incomplete so long as Kairi's heart is locked away inside Sora. So Sora, being the naive and good-hearted soul, in addition to really wanting to push that E rating on the box, does this. So Sora's dead. But hey, Kairi's alive again and the Disney princesses have their hearts back. But it's not game over, as we become the very thing we've been fighting all game, a Heartless. Now at first glance this seems like an odd part to be playable, and while it was probably done to just illustrate how lost Sora's heart was, this moment would eventually be the inciting incident for 2 other games in the series going forward, and several character creations, believe it or not. Heartless Sora reaches the party as they make their escape and Kairi refuses to leave.
This time I'll protect you. Sora!
Kairi!
Kairi, thank you.
Sora!
Well, now that Sora's back in action, the party regroups at Traverse Town to figure out how to deal with Ansem. They decide to head back to Hollow Bastion first to close the keyhole and then chase Ansem down wherever he went. We successfully close the keyhole and meet up with Yuffie, Aerith, and Leon, who reveal not only that Hollow Bastion is their original homeworld, but that all of our actions to stopping Ansem are great, but they come with a pretty hefty downside. You see, killing Ansem off and stopping the Door to Darkness opening will essentially reset the universe back to default factory settings, which means that all of the worlds are going to be walled off from each other again and no one's going to be able to see anybody. After saying our goodbyes, the trio heads to the end of the world, literally that's what it's called, to fight Ansem. For a long multi-phase fight, we finish Ansem. However, before we can completely finish him, he tries to unlock the darkness within Kingdom Hearts itself, only for Sora to screw him over by exploiting the main message of the series, which is that even in darkness, there's always light.
You're wrong. I know now, without a doubt, Kingdom Hearts is light.
But why?
The group then heads to close the doors to Kingdom Hearts along with help from Riku and the long-awaited appearance of King Mickey in his red shorts. However, Riku and Mickey have to stay on the other side of the door, as Sora locks it with the Keyblade. The worlds are restored and blocked off as Kairi reappears on the Destiny Islands, while Sora, Donald, and Goofy now appear in a strange, winding field chasing after Pluto, who seems to have a letter from Mickey hinting at the inevitable sequel. So how does that whole plot hold up? Well, if we looked at the context of the entire franchise, then Kingdom Hearts has a pretty easy to follow plot with very little in the way of confusing moments. As we'll soon see, the series can get bogged down in a lot of its complicated story beats and lore. Though to be honest, I want to stress that I have never been that confused by this series. Some people act like this series is calculus like on steroids, and it's really not that bad. Things do get crazy to be sure, but I've never had to consult a guide or read 800 different books or online internet articles to figure out what the hell's going on. Regardless, this story keeps things relatively simple. It's basically just Sora, Donald, and Goofy visiting the Disney World and trying to find Riku, Kairi, and Mickey, while sealing the keyholes along the way. The one thing that I have to take away from the first Kingdom Hearts is the original characters of Sora, Riku, and Kairi, and while they serve pretty generic templates for this game, some of them have very good character arcs as the series progressed. To talk more about it now would verge on heavy spoilers, so I'll just get into more details when we actually get there. The main plot does kind of take a back seat at certain worlds, but there's always some kind of story beat either after you complete a world or two, and there are breaks when you go back to Traverse Town, and that pushes the story forward. Some people over the years have expressed a disinterest in this form of plot, arguing that the plot is left out to hang and dry for hours, and I kind of see where they're coming from, but I never really had an issue with this. Maybe it's because I grew up playing a lot of N64 Zelda, where the main plot essentially was on pause for 3/4 of the game, so I was kind of used to that. Also, the joy of seeing the next Disney World and seeing what kind of story unfolds there is interesting enough. I do like how each Disney World plot tries to replicate things from the film, while also trying to be its own thing. Like how in Halloween Town, Jack's obsession with Christmas from the movie is kind of replaced with the obsession of getting the Heartless to dance with him in an effort to make Halloween more exciting. In terms of the overall plot, there are a few loose plot points that would be addressed in the sequels, though I still was pretty taken aback way back in the day that this game had such a major cliffhanger for a first installment. Although you kind of saw this thing happen a lot during the PS2 era. A ton of studios would push games out that were the first part of a trilogy or a series, and they would end the first game off with a major cliffhanger, making you think, oh, what will happen next? But then they never got the follow-up. Not only did Kingdom Hearts do this, but they also had the secret ending, which began a tradition for the franchise. See, completing the game and getting several side quests done unlocked a bonus post-credit scene showing a sort of concept trailer for the next game. And this was a batshit trailer at that, with weird phrases and a look at a character wielding 2 Keyblades and Mickey Mouse in a freaking black coat. I mean, now they got to redesign him? Well, I guess it was kind of covering him up, so maybe that was allowed. To be honest, I've always preferred how to unlock the ending in the first game compared to how the sequels handle this. See, in the original PS2 game, you had to seal all of the keyholes, which basically meant beating all of the levels, even the optional ones that you didn't have to do, and complete 2 main side quests. Later games regulate unlocking the ending behind the difficulty level for the most part. On the highest difficulty, the ending is automatically given to you as a freebie, whereas playing on normal requires a certain percent of 100% completion to be done. But as you'll see, these games are not that difficult even on the highest setting, so unlocking the ending has never really felt as epic and rewarding than it did in that first game. Well, now that we spent a small college essay and I've bored you on for about a half hour worth of plot, let's finally talk about the gameplay. So Kingdom Hearts is a real-time action RPG. There's no ATB bars from Final Fantasy here, just a box of commands and that's it. You're free to run around and find enemies and then button mash until they're gone, and it is so much fun. You've got standard ground and air combos in addition to using magic and summons. The magic commands fill in as you defeat bosses and are taken straight from the Final Fantasy library of magical terms. You know, you get your Fire, your Fryagra, your Blizzaga, your Dundaga, you know, the weird words. The summons are all rewards for beating bosses or completing worlds, and they're all from other Disney films that are not always represented by a level in-game. So you can summon Mushu from Mulan, title characters Dumbo and Bambi, the Genie from Aladdin, and Tinkerbell from Peter Pan. Oh, also Simba from The Lion King. And fun fact, Simba is a summon because a world based on The Lion King was cut out of the game due to limitations that the team faced when trying to create the level. Combat is a lot of fun, mostly because there's no right way to take down the Heartless. If you want to mash the X button all day and just use Sora's Keyblade, you can. Want to add magic to the shortcut box and take out the opposition only using magic? You can. There's no enemies that require a set way to take out, so combat's always open-ended. And honestly, it's why repeat playthroughs are so interesting, because you might want to change up how you played the game. I mean, maybe you want to excel in defense and be weaker in strength, or maybe you'll be stronger in magic and weaker in defense, and you can change it up each time. Defeating the Heartless grants you experience points in an obvious RPG fashion. This makes you level up. Each time Sora levels up, there's a different bonus given to you. This can fluctuate between HP increases, strength and defense increases, AP increases, or a new ability will be learned. And a small pet peeve here that was fixed in later games is how if you want to check on how many experience points you need to reach the next level, you'll have to wait till combat is finished, open up the menu, go into status, and check Sora's name to see the number of points needed. Later games fixed this by placing the number of experience points needed actually on the screen as you defeat each Heartless, and I just love that design choice. Leveling up is always exciting because it'll always be a tense moment wondering what upgrade you're going to get, unless you're using a guide and you see what you're going to get. Though it can kind of be a bummer when you get the AP boost upgrade, because while it does raise the total number of AP, which in turn allows you to equip more abilities, if you already have equipped all the ones you have, then there's really no need for it, and it can kind of seem like a wasted reward while you leveled up. What really does make the combat shine are the plethora of abilities that Sora can learn. These are mostly obtained by leveling up, but a few are given out for beating certain bosses or completing certain side quests in-game. You're given AP, ability points, and each ability costs a certain number of points to equip, so you can't take them all into battle. Abilities can add extra combos to your ground and aerial attacks, or it can let you perform new moves like Sonic Blade or Dodge Roll, though by far my favorite has got to be Guard, as it allows you to block moves to avoid taking damage. And the thing I like most about it is that it's on you, the player, to time incoming attacks and use Guard to your advantage. There is nothing more satisfying in this game's combat than learning that there's a boss attack that can be guarded, and then use it to negate all the damage you would have taken. There's also the shared abilities, and just as that name implies, these are, well, shared abilities between Sora, Donald, and Goofy. These include High Jump, which is a godsend when you get it, because Sora's base jump is pretty pathetic. The game's not heavy on the platforming, but trust me, once you get the High Jump, anything that requires you to jump on becomes hella easier. Mermaid Kick, which is used mostly in Atlantica to move past the strong currents, but you can also use it to have Sora swim faster in regular water, in which there isn't really a whole lot of sections where there is regular water, but hey, it's there. Finally, there's Glide and Super Glide. Glide is self-explanatory as it just adds the motion of gliding out of a jump, and Super Glide is even more self-explanatory as it's just a faster glide. These abilities are mainly used in a way to further explore the levels and reach out-of-the-way spots that you can't get to in the early hours. A bit of an issue with the combat is that your party members are kind of trash, especially when you crank up the difficulty. There are ways to tweak Donald and Goofy's AI, causing them to attack targets that are different from the one that Sora's on, or to conserve their MP in certain situations. You can also give them equipment along with healing items and then control how they use them in battle. However, even with all these options, Donald and Goofy will either run through all the items in a heartbeat or wind up KO'd. You can make it through the standard difficulty barely touching their equipment or even giving them any items. However, on Proud, you're going to have to get a little creative on how to keep them alive. They burn through the items like I said, and they die in a few hits here. It's almost impossible to keep them alive for a whole boss fight, so relying on them to heal you or help you is pretty much a no-go in these scenarios. You basically have to get them some of the best equipment and accessories to give them a fighting chance, and even then it's still going to be a coin toss as to whether or not they'll survive. Trust me, there's a reason why the game revives them after they've been KO'd for a few minutes. It's like the game knew that permanently knocking them out would have been more frustrating for the player to be in control of bringing them back to life every 4 seconds. The worlds are fun to explore for the most part, though a few of them can be a bit on the small side. Also, a little bit of a side note here, although this is probably more limitations on the PS2's hardware, you're not exactly getting worlds that are robust, filled with multiple characters. Each Disney World tends to have just a couple of the main characters from the movie hanging around in 1 or 2 areas, but the rest of the areas you walk through are kinda desolate. This is kinda gonna be a problem for the series all the way up until Kingdom Hearts 3 when they finally started to make NPCs sort of walk around and stuff, so the levels didn't feel like they were, empty dioramas that you're just running through. Exploring each world is engaging because there are treasure chests to find and Trinity markers to hit. The Trinity markers come in different colors and result in different actions taking place. Blue ones give you money and items, green ones have the party forming a ladder to reach rewards or open a new area, yellow ones cause you to push something, and again this is to open up paths to rewards, red is a charge, which also kind of pushes things now that I think about it, but it also opens up new sections. Finally, the white Trinity grants you a special chest with a weapon for Sora, Donald, or Goofy inside. You learn each Trinity as the game goes on, so there's always a reason to potentially go back to old worlds to see what you can pick up. And I like that the game pushes you into returning to explore some of the older worlds, and it's not just like a one and done type deal with them. Searching for chests is also part of the side quest in which you must find the 101 Dalmatians for Pongo and Perdita. So I guess essentially you're finding the 99 Dalmatians. Anyway, 3 puppies are hidden in each chest, and please don't stop to think about how those poor things are breathing inside of a sealed box with no air holes. It can be fun to go around each world and use the new Trinity abilities and Sora's shared abilities to find these rewards. Where the exploration can fall a bit flat is that you kinda wait all game seeing some of these chests just taunting you right out in the open. You'll come back hours later to open it, only to learn that there's a gummy block inside, and I can't tell you how many chests in this damn game have gummy blocks and how utterly disappointed I am every time I open one. A slight issue to the exploration of the worlds is the design of some of the levels and how the game doesn't always give you a clear indication of what needs to be done. I can think of 2 areas where this happens, and again, this isn't a major issue or anything, it just seems like a slight oversight that might cause a few small percentage of players to get a little confused. The first is in Deep Jungle, where the game doesn't clue you into the fact that you have to go around to each area in the level and defeat all of the Heartless, which upon doing so has you rescuing a gorilla. After you clear all these areas, you gotta go back to the tent and then exit it, in which the next cutscene will trigger. This isn't really a crazy design flaw. Odds are you might search around for a bit defeating all the Heartless and then go back inside the tent either to save your game or talk to Jane, which will cause you to trigger that cutscene. Well, this kind of feels like the game wanted you to feel around in the dark a bit to trigger the next section. I mean, what if you don't fight all the Heartless in every area and you just walk through? I mean, then you don't get the reward from the gorilla. Would you know that you have to do that in every area? I mean, eventually, process of elimination will get you there, but it kind of seems like a little bit of a cheap design to pad out the area a little bit. Like, oh, let's just have them walk around for 15 minutes until they figure it out. The second one is actually one that got me as a kid, and this one takes place in Atlantica. After visiting Ariel's grotto, she'll tell you to search around for the keyhole, and you'll leave the grotto and see a dolphin that swims nearby, and you might not think anything of this. You'll search around for a bit more and get stuck without making progress. You see, the next game trigger here is that it wants you to go near the dolphin and hit the reaction trigger to ride it, in which the dolphin will guide you to the calm depths and into the next area. However, if you don't go near this dolphin, you might not see the reaction command, and hell, you might not necessarily even think the dolphin is the answer to getting into the next area. I honestly didn't even see this dolphin the first time I played, and I straight up skipped this world until I read a guide and explaining what I needed to do. Like I said, these aren't the worst examples ever of terrible game design. It's more like a small little hiccup on the road, which feels like the game could have done a little better at providing a hint as to what to do next. Like, how about after you leave the grotto, maybe show like a panning scene that shows the dolphin in the back. You don't have to have the character say, "Gee, Sora, maybe we should ride that dolphin into the next area." Like, that would be kind of stupid. But like, maybe just pan out a little bit into the area, like say, "Oh, let's look for the keyhole," and then it pans out to show the rest of the level and you see the dolphin swimming by and be like, maybe it had something to do with that dolphin, or focus on the dolphin in some way in a cutscene or in a quick little shot so you know that that's what you have to touch. Though I guess I should be careful what I wish for, because a future game in the series seems to have addressed this slight issue with a bit too much oversight, as we'll see. But again, another time. Regarding how our heroes travel around and arrive at each Disney World, well, that would bring us to the infamous Gummy Ship. Oh boy, the Gummy Ship. At first, when Goofy mentions the ship, it sounds like a somewhat interesting notion. I mean, traveling through space, shooting down Heartless in their weird little ships could be a fun little minigame to break up the tension between exploration in each world. However, I can guarantee you that after one trip on the Gummy Ship, You'll never want to ride it again. Like Goofy said, the goal is simple. You travel along the route and you shoot at anything that comes your way. What he doesn't tell you is that the ship moves as slow as all hell and you're on rails with very few obstacles in your path. And look, like I said, I love this series to death, and this game is one of my favorites in the franchise, but even I can very honestly tell you that the gummy ship is one of the weakest aspects of the first game, and I dread playing through this. All the routes play out the same with a barrage of enemies and some weird abstract obstacles littering the path. You shoot at the Heartless ships and you pick up the rewards that fall out, and these can be health upgrades or energy for your ship to fire the more powerful weapons, or hell, even the blueprints for the enemy ships themselves. And can I just say that the stuff littering the paths between levels is very strange, like these weird floating game show panels and strange Tetris blocks, and of course, who could forget the rejected Olympic rings that are just left out in subspace. There are 10 main routes to take, and the good news is that you only have to travel them once, at least until you get the warp block gummy that allows you to take you straight to the level, granted you've already landed there. Now there's a slight system in place to kind of make the gummy ship sections not as tedious. You can edit the ship you're flying around in by adding more blocks, weapons, and gadgets, and this is where you can switch and use the enemy ships from the blueprints you picked up. The weapons can destroy ships faster and even break some of the obstacles in your path, while the gadgets can be used to obtain prizes more easily or to speed up the ship. Though don't get too excited when I say that, because the haste block gummy that does this doesn't exactly turn your ship into a rocket. It does take a few minutes to learn how the system works and to find the right part and then add it to your ship. The truth be told, you never have to edit the gummy ship once throughout the entire game. The same vanilla ship from the first hour can make it all the way through to the end of the game. Overall, this minigame isn't worth putting any more effort into than you need to. In the original game, that is. See, if you're playing the more recent HD releases, which is based on the Final Mix version like I said, there's more to the gummy ship. You see, Final Mix includes gummy ship missions, certain objectives that you must clear when traveling between the worlds, and this can range from something as simple as getting a high score and blasting all the enemies, or something crazy insane like taking off from a world and land in another world with only 3 blocks, no weapons, and get no score. The mission objectives basically require you to use the ship editor, which as I mentioned before, could be completely untouched in the original. Some of the missions need you to equip certain weapons or blocks, and so at some point you're going to need to edit the base ship that you started with. And what is the reward for doing all the missions? Well, you get trophies on the PS3, PS4 version. And please, play the PS4 version, because in that one you don't have to complete every single mission, whereas in the PS3 base version of this game, you had to do all of the damn missions, including the insane ones like the one I mentioned before. Other than the trophies though, there really isn't any reward for doing it. I mean, sure, you obtain blocks when you complete the missions, but they're not that useful. I feel like the gummy ship missions in Final Mix are like a band-aid for a bullet wound. The original gummy ship was slow and boring, and there was never a need to edit the ship or really do anything fancy on routes other than just shoot crap. So the missions in Final Mix just sort of scream, hey, did you know you can edit your ship? Like, it's nice to have an objective on each route, but considering the rewards for doing so are so lackluster, I can't see this being an area of the game people spend time on willingly. The gummy ship is something the franchise will continue to tweak as the series goes onward, thankfully. In regards to the side content to lure you away from the main plot, there are several options. The first are the tournaments housed in Olympus Coliseum. The first 3 include the Phil, Pegasus, and Hercules Cup, which have you battling through 10 fights of random Heartless. There are rewards for finishing the cups with Sora, Donald, and Goofy, finishing under a time limit, and finishing with just Sora. These cups unlock as you make progress through the story, and you're free to engage them as soon as they open, or you can wait until later. Then there's the Hades Cup, which contains a massive 50 fights, which also includes several boss fights, in addition to the standard Heartless. After finishing the majority of the main quest line, you'll also get access to 2 bonus fights. One is against the Ice Titan and the other is against Sephiroth, and that was that other Final Fantasy character that Cloud was looking for. These fights are extremely challenging and require you to be at a high level and have some of the best equipment on hand. If fighting isn't enough of a break from the main action, there are also mini-games to take part in. A world I didn't mention in the plot summary was the 100 Acre Wood. This is sort of an optional world that appeals about halfway through the game and doesn't function as one of the traditional levels. You see, when Sora first enters the book, he's told that several pages are missing and you can find them within 5 of the other Disney worlds. This world has no Heartless. Instead, when you bring a page back to the book, you're given more of the world's plot, while also unlocking a minigame to play. In regards to how these minigames function, it's kind of a mixed bag, and honestly, in hindsight, I never realized how lame some of these minigames were. The first involves helping Pooh get honey from the honey tree. Pooh is using a balloon here to reach the top, and stopping him from reaching it are the bees that come out of the beehives. So Sora has to jump up the tree and attack the bees. However, once you reach the top, you can legit stand in one spot and just hit the attack button when the bees are close. And you can lock him in a loop where Sora can't fall down the tree and the bees can't hit Pooh, making it essentially unlosable. The second minigame is stopping Tigger from squashing Rabbit's carrots. You have to land under Tigger before he hits the carrot to squash it into the ground. And this is almost impossible to do if you just move Sora around normally. Instead, you have to use the rush command to quickly launch Sora under where Tigger can land. This one's just kind of boring as you just rely on pressing the rush button, and there really isn't a ton of skill involved here, nor is this game particularly fun. The third minigame, which I struggle to call a minigame, is a complete joke. The concept is that you're trying to find Eeyore's tail, so Owl gets the idea to launch Pooh out of a swing to see if he can spot it, which makes legit no sense. Anyway, all you do to launch Pooh is press the R1 button to move the swing. You do this 3 times, pressing the button whenever Owl here spreads his wings open, and you win. This isn't so much a minigame as a content-sensitive story event. The 4th game is a memory sequence game in which you have to jump on several tree stumps following in Tigger's path. Now this would be an easy one if the game didn't for some reason lock the high jump ability during this minigame. By the time you unlock this particular page with this game, Sora will most likely have high jump, but regardless, once you start this minigame, they turn the ability off and you're left with Sora's default base jump, which, did I forget to mention, sucks? It's so short and barely makes the distance. This is definitely the most game-like minigame of the bunch so far, but with that crippled jump, it just makes things needlessly frustrating. And then the final one has you searching a small area to find all of Pooh's friends. You basically just walk around and lock onto a friend, they come out, and you find them. It's a glorified walking simulator. So overall, the 100 Acre Wood is kind of a letdown. Out of the 5 minigames, there's one legit game with the Tigger bouncing game, but the rest are just so disappointing. The Pooh swing one always makes me laugh because I can't believe that counts as a minigame. You can complete it with one hand and your eyes closed. Looking ahead, I'm happy to report that Square seems to have learned from their mistakes here, because the minigames and the sequels involving this world are so much better, and dare I say it, they're actually games that are fun to replay several times. If the minigames in the 100 Acre Wood aren't enough to hold your attention, and let's be honest here, there's like a 2% chance of that actually happening, you can go back to combat and collect materials from fallen enemies to use in the synthesis shop. Once you gain access to the shop, you can craft various pieces of equipment and items using the material from fallen enemies. And some of these items are definitely worth the hassle of grinding out fights for materials. You can craft some of the best equipment in the game here. Equipment for raising how much EXP you earn from fights, and even craft the ultimate Keyblade for Sora. In this version of the game, some of the material and items work differently because Final Mix has several new types of Heartless that weren't in the original. These Heartless have like a trick to beating them, like one requires you to attack it super fast before it spots you and then basically becomes unhittable, while another plays the shell game with you and you have to hit the correct one. There are also several optional boss fights, which at one point were exclusive to the North American version of the game. This included the fight against the Ice Titan in Sephiroth. There's also the Phantom in Neverland, Kurt Ziza in Agrabah, and the final optional boss being the Mysterious Man in Hollow Bastion. But this fight was exclusive to only the Final Mix version for a while. These characters, with the exception of the Ice Titan and Sephiroth, are not based on existing characters, though in a fun bit of trivia, the Kurt Ziza name came from a contest in North America with the winner getting their name to be used in-game. These fights are extremely more challenging, like I said, than anything else in the base game, which makes sense, though simply getting Sora around to the level 70 mark will drastically make this easier, at least to a certain degree. These fights can be a lot of fun, the exception being Phantom here, since he requires you to mostly use magic to defeat him, and if you don't have a ton of MP, this can be a bit of a drag. The fight against the Mystery Man in Hollow Bastion began the series tradition of ending the game with a special fight against the character who would go on to appear in a future game. It also began the series tradition of having a secret boss fight that is hard as hell and requires more than just a high-level cap to defeat. Presentation-wise, things are beautiful. The base PS2 game was already a sight to behold, even as a relatively early title on the system. The HD upgrade makes things look even sharper and brighter, while the textures are more defined than they were in the original. There is a slight blemish on the whole presentation, and that's how during the game's cutscenes, character models will sometimes switch from having mouths and facial features that are actually animated to this weird textured lip flap and textured eyes thingy. It happens a lot in this game, and while it's not terrible that it'll prevent you from enjoying the cutscenes, it can be very noticeable. Also, it's a shame, because when the characters are actually fully animated, it looks great and gives the characters a ton of personality. Voice acting is solid across the board. The Disney characters are voiced mostly by their original actors, which helps with the authenticity, though there are a few replacement voice actors, which can be a disappointment. But the replacements do a well enough job, so sorry, no Robin Williams as Genie or Danny DeVito as Phil. In regards to the original characters, the voice acting is very well done. Sora is voiced by Haley Joel Osment, and he brings the naivety to Sora's nice guy personality. David Gallagher voices Riku, and he nails that more serious, cool vibe that Riku's got going. And Hayden Panettiere voices Kairi, and she has a sweet and innocent voice. But there are actually a few scenes where she gets to kind of expand on that. It works very well. The three have decent starts here, and in later games they really get to expand on their characters. Well, at least I should say Osment and Gallagher do, because apparently Square just didn't seem to want to invite Hayden Panettiere to come back after Kingdom Hearts 2. In regards to the voice of Ansem, that's a bit tricky. So in this game, he's voiced by actor Billy Zane, who you probably know from Titanic. He does a good job with the menacing voice and sounding all evil, although I can't really talk about the performance too much since it touches kind of too much on spoilers for later games, but I'll promise I'll address it when I can. God, I keep saying that. I should take a shot every time I do. Finally, let's talk about the music at long last. As you probably already surmised from how excited I was at the start of this review over the music, I'll just clearly come out and say that the music in Kingdom Hearts is flat out amazing. Hell, I love this score so much that way back in the day, I convinced my parents to export the soundtrack from Japan for me. Oh, the days before YouTube and online music streaming sources. Yoko Shimura, who prior to this was probably known for her work on Super Mario RPG, another great soundtrack by the way, crafted a beautiful score, and I find it very interesting that instead of just picking the songs from the Disney movies and just making instrumental loops of them, Shimura composed brand new original pieces that fit in so well with each Disney world. Of course, she doesn't completely get off the hook in that regards. Under the Sea, This Is Halloween, and the theme from Winnie the Pooh are used in their respected worlds, but even they have such a nice flavor to them that it doesn't feel like it was just copied and pasted into the game. Dearly Beloved, like I said, became an anthem for the franchise, and I love how she always tweaks it in each of the following games. It's like just when I think I've heard the most beautiful rendition of it, she outdoes herself on the next version. Seriously, there is so much good music here that if I started listing it, I would legit just name every track in the game. I love her use of character themes and themes for each of the worlds. The music for Traverse Town feels lighthearted and warm, symbolic of the haven the world is to those whose own worlds have been lost to the Heartless, whereas Hollow Bastion's theme feels cold and empty, with a slight build of anticipation, a representation of the fact that you finally reached the end of your journey, and that this is a world that's been damaged by the Heartless and it's been left as a fractured shell of itself. There's a beautiful hint of piano in some tracks that really convey a ton of emotion. Considering that up to this point the Final Fantasy games had been producing amazing soundtracks one right after the other with the help of Nobuo Uematsu, I'm really glad Kingdom Hearts was able to be given a fantastic soundtrack. Yoko Shimura is truly a massive talent. When I went to the Kingdom Hearts World of Trez concert, she showed up at the end and every single person in that audience gave that woman the standing ovation she deserved. Side mention here, if you play the HD version of the game on these newer releases, you're going to get a reworked orchestrated version of the entire soundtrack, and I'll be honest here and say that while some of the reworked versions are amazing too, not every track benefited from the retooling. Destiny Islands and Under the Sea just sound more energetic in the original than they do here. Not to say that the redone tracks are bad by any stretch, they just come off as different in a few cases. Though to be fair, I had been listening to the base version of the soundtrack for almost a decade before hearing these new reworked ones, so it might be more of a personal bias slipping through on my part. Overall, Kingdom Hearts is a solid entry point for the series, and it's honestly one of my favorite games in the franchise. The plot is engaging, and while it's kind of on hiatus for the majority, there are just enough teases and hints of what's to come to lure you into seeing it to its conclusion. It's also always fun to see which Disney world you're going to be visiting next. It's also one of the more streamlined plots in the franchise, so I gotta give it bonus points on that alone. Combat is fun as there's always something new to try out, whether it's a new ability, magic spell, or a stronger Keyblade. And there's always plenty to do on the side if you want to take a break from the main narrative. And sure, while the Gummy Ship and the 100 Acre Wood are kinda lackluster, they never really drag on, or they're never really forced upon you. The Gummy routes take about a minute or two, and the 100 Acre Wood is completely optional. The presentation is beautiful with bright and vivid colors along with the added HD bump to the textures. The soundtrack is amazing and worth a listen even after you've completed the story. So if you've never played Kingdom Hearts but you're a fan of Final Fantasy and Disney, and you like your RPG franchises filled with in-depth lore, and you secretly always wanted to see Donald Duck throw a fireball at Cloud, then you owe it to yourself to give it a try. Like I said, this game isn't crazy difficult, but there's just enough of a challenge here, and it's perfect for anyone looking to break into the RPG genre. I've replayed this game more times than I can count. I have 2 PS2 memory cards filled with save files over the span of probably 10 years. And I can still remember to this day playing right after coming home from school and spending all weekend trying to make progress. Pretty sure it took me like 10 months to beat this game at first, mainly because I could only play on the weekends when the TV was free for me to use. But now it's hilarious because I can beat this game in like 3 hours, skipping all the cutscenes. I was 11 when this game came out, and I was 28 by the time the series wrapped up the story that began in this game. A huge chunk of my life involved these games, and a ton of stuff happened in my life while playing them, both good and bad. I can't remember a ton of stuff from when I was a kid anymore, but what I can remember clear as day is my 11-year-old self in the 6th grade coming home and trying to beat the Riku Ansem fight for hours and hours. I think most of us gamers have that one game that truly stays with us no matter how much time's passed. A ton of big franchises out there, you know, your Mario, Zelda, Halo, Call of Duty, and they were all out and around long before I jumped on board to play them. But Kingdom Hearts was mine. No review told me to play it, no one recommended it. I took a chance on the crazy idea of a kid with taxi-cab colored shoes fighting shadow monsters across various Disney movies while getting help from some Japanese role-playing game characters. And you know what, I'm glad I did. Sorry, I didn't mean to get all sentimental there at the end, but I really want to describe what this franchise means to me. So in closing, I think you should give the first game a try, and don't simply just write it off because it's got Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse and you think it's a baby's game for children. Kingdom Hearts is the blending of nostalgia of things that some of us grew up with, be that these Disney films or Final Fantasy characters. Its main storyline with the original characters has always been the real reason I come back for each game, because the more crafted a story that was on par with any of the Final Fantasy titles, although I guess it's probably on par with more of the earlier Final Fantasy games, because anything after 12 was just garbage. So, you should give it a shot, and at least try this one. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on the Kingdom Hearts review series when we take a look at the second game in the series, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. Thanks for watching.